can I do? Well, the first thing is you want to use dissonance. And dissonance comes from a theory called cognitive dissonance. And basically what that means is dissonance is a situation or a state of being where there's no agreement or there's a lacking of harmony. Things are dissonant, meaning they're in conflict, there's no harmony, there's no agreement, and they're kind of fighting against one another. So dissonance theory or cognitive dissonance theory says that when somebody presents information that's inconsistent with your attitudes, beliefs, values, or behavior, you're aware of the fact that there's a problem. And then what you do is you become uncomfortable. So cognitive is your brain is processing information, and dissonance is lack of harmony. So when your brain senses a lack of harmony or agreement between your attitudes, beliefs, values, or behaviors and what information's being presented, you feel uncomfortable and you want, more than anything, to restore balance. Somehow make it so what that person's telling you becomes consistent with your new attitudes, beliefs, and values. Here's the problem with dissonance, is the listeners can sometimes discredit you. They may reinterpret the message, meaning they choose to focus on parts of the message that are consistent with what they already know, and then they forget what you said because that disagrees with how I'm living my life. They may seek new information. So what they may do after your speech is get on their phone and start Googling things and say, is this a minority opinion that I just heard somebody say, or is there a lot of information to support this speaker's point of view? They may also just stop listening. They may say, you know what, the dissonance is too great, this disharmony is too great, I'm not going to listen to you anymore because I can't make a change, I can't make it right, why bother? And last but not least, they may actually change their attitudes, beliefs, values, and behaviors, and that's what you want ultimately. So dissonance can certainly work. The second way is you can use listeners' needs, and there's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs on page 223. I think we may have gone over this when we were doing the informative speech lecture, but I can't remember. But basically what it is that hierarchy where physiological needs, things like air, water, and food are at the bottom of the hierarchy. Next is safety needs, and that's your need to feel safe, secure, protected. The next level is your social needs, that you want to feel loved and valued. The next is self-esteem, that we all have the desire to think well of ourselves. And last but not least is self-actualization needs, and that means that basically it's our highest potential possible. And if you start to look at people's needs, you'll see that even an entire audience has some common physiological needs, air and water. They have some common safety needs, that they have a house, and that house is in good condition, and there are locks on the doors, and they can drive a car that's safe. All of those things are going to be common throughout an audience. We all want to feel loved and valued. That's just a common thread through all audience members. So you might want to evaluate those as well. You can use positive and negative motivation. Positive motivation are statements that suggest good things will happen if your advice is followed. The opposite of that is negative motivation, and what that tells us is basically if you don't do these things I'm telling you to do, bad things are going to happen. So when you're putting together your rough draft of this speech, which won't be for another 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to choose in the main point 3 whether or not you're going to use positive or negative motivation. You won't be using both. It'll be one or the other. So make a note of that so that you remember when it comes to doing your rough draft outline. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is how you use fear appeals to persuade. And the more credible your audience perceives you to be, the more likely that your fear appeals will be effective. And a fear appeal is just something that people are fearful of happening, and you basically tell them, if you don't do this, this will happen. So for example, if you're a parent and you don't put your child who's under 48 inches in a car seat, they will die. Okay? That, to a certain extent, can be a fear appeal that works against you, because people will say, 48 inches, I don't think they're going to die if they're 4 feet tall and we get in an accident. The chances of that are unlikely. However, a baby absolutely belongs in a car seat. So that fear appeal may work against you if the audience doesn't believe it to be true. The other thing is, if you increase the intensity of the fear appeal, and so it just gets to be something that's intense, like your child dying, it'll be effective as long as the audience can take action, that there's something they can do to ensure that that fear will not come to be, that they can do something to evade that fearful situation. It's also helpful that in your reason to listen, you use maybe how what you're going to talk to about affects their family members, their friends. Strong threats to loved ones oftentimes are more successful for whatever reason than the ones that are geared towards us, because sometimes we're more worried about our loved ones than we are about ourselves. Some of us have that tendency to think that we're invincible. So keep that in mind when using fear appeals, and that goes along with the negative motivation. Fear appeals don't apply to positive motivation, just the negative motivation. So the next couple of slides just go into detail, and you're more than welcome to look through these. You certainly don't need to, because I've covered all of them. Finally, I already talked about your persuasive topic selection. Again, we're dealing with a question of policy. If you want more information, page 226 clearly outlines each one of those 3 types of topics. And that's pretty much it for chapter 23. Make sure, please, that you submit your persuasive topic on Canvas. There's actually a submission box. You can just type it in. Please make sure you follow the format of the topic selection worksheet. If you type in any random format and you just tell me what it's about and it's not in the correct format, you will be docked points. In addition, you need to give me sources, 5 total, that you will use to write your persuasive speech. If these sources aren't there, you're going to get 5 out of 10 points. If the sources are there, you're going to get 10 out of 10 points. If the sources are there and your topic's a question of policy, but it's not in the proper format, you're probably going to get 7 points. It depends. I may give you 8, but probably not. 7 sounds like a more reasonable score for somebody that didn't follow the format. So that's what you need to do. In terms of the sources, just give me an APA format. Some of you are unclear what that is, but you can go to bibme.org, plug in your information. It will spit out the APA format, and then you just copy it and paste it. And you can create your works cited page right now, because you know all 5 of those are probably going to be used. But make sure that that's how you submit them to me, on a works cited page, or you can just do works cited and then list those 5 sources. So you don't need to give me a scan or anything. You will need to bring them to class when we meet on the 28th. So make sure that you do have a hard copy and you can access it. If you have questions, please email me. I think that I may have a little bit of difficulty getting email, but Monday and Friday I'll be able to respond a little bit more easily. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday may be tricky for me. I'm going to try my best, but I was reading that I might have some challenges there. So that's it. Miss you guys terribly. Well, I don't know about terribly, but anyways, I will see you guys back on March 28th.